What collapses first when World War III begins? Most people imagine bombs falling, tanks rolling, or fighter jets screaming across the sky. But the first collapse won't be military. It will be economic. And that collapse, according to both Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, could be faster, deeper, and more devastating than anything seen on a battlefield. For decades, world leaders have warned that the next global conflict would not start with armies clashing, but with markets breaking. Wars today are fought not only with weapons, but with money, oil, energy, and trade. The economic foundation of the modern world is fragile. Interconnected supply chains, currencies tied to political trust, and financial systems built on mountains of debt. When the shooting starts, those foundations shake first, and once they crack, everything else follows. Donald Trump has said it plainly. The dollar is our greatest weapon, but it could also be our greatest weakness. He argued that the moment faith in the US dollar is shaken, the American economy could collapse overnight. Inflation would skyrocket, markets would crash, jobs would vanish. The strength of the United States rests not only on its military might, but on the belief that the dollar will always hold value. If that belief fades, no tank or missile can restore it. Vladimir Putin, from the other side of the global chessboard, has been preparing for that exact moment. He believes the West has built a system so fragile, so dependent on illusions of control, that one shock could break it apart. In his eyes, sanctions, debt, and overconfidence have created a Western economy ripe for collapse. And he has said more than once that economic warfare, cutting energy flows, disrupting markets, weaponizing trade, can be just as effective as bombs. The danger is not only in what collapses, but in how quickly it happens. History shows us that when the financial system breaks, it breaks suddenly. In 1929, the stock market crash wiped out fortunes in a matter of days and pushed the world into depression. In 1973, the oil embargo turned gas stations empty and economies into chaos almost overnight. And in 2008, the collapse of Lehman Brothers rippled across the globe in weeks, leaving millions jobless. Now imagine those shocks, but multiplied, amplified by war, and playing out in real time while missiles are flying. Trump has warned that adversaries like Iran, Russia, or China won't attack directly. They'll go after the weak points, the seams, the blind spots. They'll hit where hesitation hurts most. In his view, World War III will begin not with a battle in Europe or the Pacific, but with an attack on the arteries of the global economy. The dollar, the energy pipelines, the shipping lanes, the digital networks that move money. These are the true front lines. And Putin has echoed that logic. He argues that the West has overplayed its hand by using sanctions so aggressively. Every time Washington freezes a bank account, blocks a transaction, or bans energy exports, it signals to the world that the global economy is a battlefield. According to Putin, this forces other nations to build alternatives, to prepare for the day when the Western-led system no longer holds. When that day comes, he believes the collapse will be self-inflicted. The West will have created an economy that cannot survive war because it is already at war with itself. So what collapses first? Some argue it's the dollar. If major nations suddenly stop using it, if oil trades in yuan, rubles, or gold instead, the dollar could lose its grip on global markets. That would send shockwaves through Wall Street and Main Street alike. Others argue it's energy. A single disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, where a fifth of the world's oil passes, could send prices skyrocketing and cripple entire economies. Still others point to supply chains. A missile strike on one port, one cyber attack on a shipping network, could leave factories from Detroit to Berlin without parts, grinding industries to a halt. And behind all of it is the same chilling reality. These collapses happen fast. An economy that looks stable today can crumble tomorrow. Confidence is like glass. Once shattered, cannot be restored. That is what makes Trump's warning so sharp, and what makes Putin's strategy so dangerous. Both men understand that the battlefield of the future is not only land, sea, or air. It is the fragile system that makes the modern world possible. The Cold War gave us mutually assured destruction, the grim belief that nuclear war would end all life. But Trump and Putin are both pointing towards something different. Mutually assured disruption. In this world, one missile isn't enough to end the war, but one economic shock is enough to change everything. And when the shooting starts, the shock will not wait. For Trump, the warning is clear. America must be ready, because hesitation will be deadly. For Putin, the message is just as clear. The West cannot be trusted to remain stable under pressure, and he is prepared to exploit that weakness. And for the rest of the world, caught in between, the lesson is terrifying. The collapse may come not from bombs, but from the quiet hum of markets breaking, from oil tankers stopped at sea, from digital zeros turning into nothing. As the convoys roll, as the threats rise, one truth becomes unavoidable. World War III will not wait for the battlefield. It will begin in the economy, and the first collapse will not be in the trenches. It will be in the trust that holds the world together. When a world war begins, the battlefield doesn't just shape the economy shapes the battlefield. What can a nation fight with if its currency collapses? How long can a country sustain war if its supply lines are cut? If its energy dries up? If its people can't afford food? These aren't abstract questions. They are the most practical realities of modern war. And they explain why the first casualties of World War III may not be soldiers, but markets. Imagine the moment the first missile strikes. Almost instantly, global investors panic. Stocks tumble. Bond markets freeze. The dollar, the euro, the yuan, all are questioned at once. In a world already weighed down by record debt, one shock could send the entire system crashing. Banks may close their doors. Governments may impose capital controls. And the digital systems that move trillions each day could go dark. Donald Trump has often argued that America's greatest strength, the dollar's dominance, is also its Achilles heel. The world trades in dollars because it trusts that Washington will always honor its commitments. But what happens when war turns that trust into doubt? If China, Russia, or Iran convince just a few nations to stop using dollars, the collapse begins. Oil priced in yuan, trade routed in rubles, gold reserves moved out of Western banks. These are not science fiction scenarios. They are plans already being tested. For Vladimir Putin, this is the prize. He has said again and again that the dollar's grip on the world is an empire of illusion, and that empires of illusion eventually fall. He doesn't need to defeat the U.S. Navy or the Pentagon. He just needs to show the world that the dollar is vulnerable. And in his eyes, war provides the perfect stage to pull back the curtain. But the collapse wouldn't stop at currencies. The next domino is energy. Oil and gas are the blood of the global economy, and pipelines and shipping routes are its veins. A single strike in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow passage where 1/5 of the world's oil flows, could send prices skyrocketing. Tankers would stall, insurance companies would refuse coverage, and economies from Europe to Asia would grind to a halt. In 1973, an oil embargo nearly tore apart Western economies. In World War III, the impact would be far worse. Europe, in particular, would feel the pain. Dependent on imports, already fragile after years of energy crises, European nations would watch as gas prices soared and factories shut down. Leaders in Berlin or Paris might talk about strategy, but ordinary families would face empty tanks and cold homes. For them, collapse would not be theoretical. It would be personal. And as Trump has pointed out, no democracy survives long when its people are freezing, hungry, and unemployed. The supply chain is another weak link. Modern economies are built on just-in-time delivery. Parts for cars, electronics, even medicine arrive daily from across the globe. But war doesn't respect timetables. A single missile strike on a port in Asia could leave assembly lines in the US and Europe idle. A cyber attack on a shipping company could strand cargo at sea. In a matter of days, store shelves could empty, prices could soar, and governments would scramble to explain why they can't deliver the basics of daily life. And this is where the psychological dimension becomes lethal. People do not need bombs to feel the effects of war. They need only to look at their bank account and see it shrinking, or at the grocery store and see food missing, or at the gas station and see the price double. Fear spreads faster than missiles, And when fear grips markets, collapse accelerates. Trump has said it before, hesitation is deadly. If leaders hesitate to restore confidence, if they hesitate to act decisively, the spiral deepens. And in that spiral, even strong economies can fall. Putin knows this as well. His strategy has often been to exploit hesitation, to create shadows and ambiguity. He doesn't need to win quickly. He needs to drag out uncertainty. A convoy spotted here, a cyber attack there, an oil disruption somewhere else. Each move creates doubt. Each doubt weakens resolve. And while democracies debate, argue, and second-guess, the markets keep falling. The technology of collapse is also different today. In the past, financial crises unfolded in days or weeks. In the age of digital trading, algorithms, and instant communication, collapse can happen in seconds. A rumor spreads on social media, a market reacts, and before leaders can even meet, billions are wiped out. Imagine that happening in the middle of a world war. The panic would not wait for explanations. It would feed on itself, consuming confidence like fire, consuming dry grass. For the United States, the question is whether its systems are resilient enough to withstand that first shock. Trump has warned that they are not. The debt is too high, the dependence on imports too great, the reliance on digital systems too fragile. For Russia and China, the strategy is simple. Push until the cracks widen, exploit every hesitation, and let the collapse unfold on its own. For smaller nations, the nightmare is being dragged into a storm they cannot control. But perhaps the most terrifying part is that no one really knows what collapses first. It could be the dollar. It could be oil. It could be supply chains. It could be all of them at once. What's certain is that when the shooting starts, the collapse will not wait. And unlike tanks or planes, you cannot shoot your way out of a financial panic. So when we talk about World War III, we can not only imagine armies, we must imagine markets. We must imagine how fragile the systems we depend on really are. Because when Trump warns that hesitation could be deadly, and when Putin hints that the West's economy is a house of cards, they are both pointing to the same truth. The first battlefield is not land, sea, or air. It is trust. And when trust collapses, everything else follows. When people talk about World War III, they picture armies clashing, jets screaming through the sky, missiles raining down. But the truth is, war doesn't just destroy buildings and borders. It destroys confidence. And when confidence collapses, so does the economy. That's the danger Western leaders face. Not only surviving the battlefield, but surviving the shockwave that ripples through the world's financial system. Think about what happens when trust disappears. Banks rely on it, markets depend on it, governments need it. Without trust, money is just paper, numbers on a screen, promises that mean nothing. Trump has said many times that America's true power isn't just its military, but its economy, the dollar, Wall Street, the system the whole world runs on. But he also warned that if the system cracks, no amount of weapons will save it. Putin knows this too, and he has built a strategy on that awareness. For him, the path to victory is not through a direct clash with NATO, but through making the world doubt America's ability to hold everything together. Picture the days after war begins. Oil shipments stall. Stock markets crash. People rush to withdraw money, only to find their banks limiting cash. Credit cards stop working in some countries. ATMs empty out. Digital transfers blocked by sanctions or cyber attacks. What good is wealth if you can't use it? What good is a market if nobody believes it will open tomorrow? These are the questions that will define World War III just as much as tanks and missiles. Trump has argued that America must always project strength because hesitation breeds panic. And in a war, panic spreads like wildfire. A rumor of shortages can spark real shortages. A dip in markets can trigger a collapse. Leaders may talk about strategy and deterrence, but ordinary families will care about food on the table, gas in the car, money in the bank. If those break down, even the strongest government begins to crumble. Putin's calculation is brutally simple. Strike the economy where it is weakest, where the system is most fragile, and let the shock do the rest. He doesn't need to conquer cities if he can make markets implode. He doesn't need to defeat armies if he can make governments fall under the weight of their own debt. And the West, already stretched thin, already polarized and divided, may find itself fighting not just an enemy abroad, but unrest at home. The collapse won't look the same everywhere. In the United States, the dollar may wobble, but the deeper shock may come from supply chains and social unrest. Americans are not used to shortages, not used to rationing, not used to the kind of sacrifice that war demands. When trucks stop moving, when grocery store shelves empty, the panic will be immediate and intense. Trump has warned that America's enemies will target exactly that, the daily life of ordinary people, because it breaks morale faster than bombs. In Europe, the collapse could begin with energy. Homes without heat, industries without power, governments forced to choose between rationing for civilians or for factories. The memory of past crises, blackouts, fuel shortages, will return, only multiplied by the scale of global war. In Asia, the collapse may come through trade. The ports of Shanghai, Singapore, Yokohama, the arteries of global commerce, could be paralyzed overnight, cutting off the flow of goods that sustain billions. And then there's the digital frontier. Cyber warfare has already shown its teeth, but in a full-scale world war, it could become the primary weapon. Imagine the internet itself fragmenting, financial systems hacked, satellites disrupted, GPS signals jammed. Modern life depends on invisible networks, and if those go dark, the collapse is immediate. No planes in the air, no ships in the water, no markets open, no communication trusted. Putin has hinted at this future, while Trump has warned that America must prepare for it, because whoever controls the digital realm controls the pace of collapse. What makes this all so dangerous is the speed. In the past, economies collapsed slowly, giving leaders time to react. Today, a cyber strike, a market panic, or an energy disruption can bring nations to their knees in hours. World War III will not give governments the luxury of weeks to decide. It will demand split-second decisions in the middle of chaos, and that's where hesitation becomes fatal. Trump has said it plainly: if you hesitate, you lose. Putin understands this, which is why his strategy thrives on creating hesitation. The moment of doubt is his battlefield. So what collapses first? Is it the dollar, the euro, the yuan? Is it oil, gas, or trade routes? Is it trust in banks or faith in governments? The honest answer is that it could be any of them, or all at once. The system is so interconnected that a break in one part quickly spreads to the rest. That is the nightmare scenario of World War III. Not just battles fought with weapons, but collapses cascading through every layer of the global economy. For leaders, the challenge is to hold their nations together in the storm. Deterrence through clarity is one path, making it absolutely certain that any strike, any economic sabotage, will be met with overwhelming retaliation. Another path is technological, building systems resilient enough to survive cyber strikes and market shocks. The final path is diplomacy, the fragile hope that even in the middle of war, leaders can find a way to limit the collapse before it consumes everyone. But history suggests that when the world slides toward chaos, reason is often the first casualty. In 1914, leaders thought war would be short, over by Christmas. In 1939, they thought appeasement could buy peace. Today, they may think the global economy is too big to collapse. But if World War III begins, collapse may come faster and harder than anyone imagines. Trump has warned that hesitation could be the deadliest weapon. Putin has demonstrated that shadows and ambiguity can be more powerful than open confrontation. Together, their warnings paint a chilling picture of what comes next. The battlefield will be everywhere, in markets, in homes, in screens, in the trust that binds societies together. And when that trust breaks, collapse follows. So as the world stares into the possibility of another global war, one truth stands above the rest. The first great shock will not be measured in miles gained or ships sunk. It will be measured in confidence lost, in systems broken, in economies shattered. The collapse will not wait for the smoke to clear. It will begin the moment the first shot is fired. And when it does, the question will not be who has the biggest army, but who can endure the longest collapse. That is the battlefield of World War III. That is the economic shock waiting just beyond the first strike. And that is the future both Trump and Putin have warned us about. A future where hesitation is deadly, and survival depends on who can adapt to the chaos first.